Hello and welcome to the NEWSPASTE podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore. And I'm here with someone today who I'm really happy to have on the podcast. We've talked in many different times before. A load of you guys know him quite well. It's Crypto Rich. How are you, Rich? Are you good?
I am good, Johnny. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your news-paced show. It's been a
Yeah.
while since you and I spoke.
I know, indeed. We spoke a lot on TNT. I had you on every other Monday for a
Yeah,
while, so we
that
could
was
have a
good.
nice conversation. It was awesome. It's awesome to have people who are you get to know and who are like-minded and you can trust, because that's hard, isn't it? I mean, in the independent media, especially in this sphere, you meet people and you're like, oh, they're really nice, and then later on you start to realize that maybe they have an agenda. And with you, there was no agenda that I could find apart from the fact that you wanted to converse about what was going on in the world at the time. And I totally love that. Totally love
Thank you.
it. So you're an awesome character. Really happy that you come on and we can have a proper conversation. Of course, I've been on your podcast as well and talked about loads of different things. Why have you decided to take over the world?
Why have I decided? Well, Bitcoin is doing really, really well. So I went and splashed out on a brand new green screen.
Hmm. Yeah, for those people who are listening, the reason I say he's can take over the world, he's got a fantastic backdrop which shows the world map on and the places where he wants to gain control. Looks like America and Europe and Asia are your main aim. Is that true?
It's the whole world, and you're looking out from my penthouse suite in a secret location somewhere.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's looking good, and it's nice. I mean, how long have you been doing this for then?
So I started my channel on YouTube April 2017.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was purely crypto, purely crypto. And then with Brexit, I started doing a little bit more political stuff. And then when lockdown came, I did a lot more political stuff. And now I'm thinking, oh my God, I need to do more crypto. I need to do more crypto. But mostly I cover a lot of politics and current affairs issues.
We're gonna have to go back to the start with this, so we're gonna have to go back and find out where you came from, who you really are, seeing as you can take over the world. We all want to know who our dictators are going to be, Rich. So,
Yes,
you're from Pakistani descent, is
yes,
that true?
yes. I was born in
Eh,
Pakistan,
so
came
you
to
were
the,
born in Pakistan.
yeah,
Where about in Pakistan were you born?
Lahore, which is the
Okay.
second largest city.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And it's a place which had a lot of military connections as well with the West in the past as well. There was also I've come across it. I do a lot of research where, of course, before Pakistan was created as it is today, and after, I do a lot of research in that area, and the Lahore Military Gazette was one of the regular papers where you find lots of this sort of New World Order formation happening. They were advertised now in Pakistan.
Wow, I didn't know that. Didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, in 1956, 57, 58, and 59, the Lahore Military Gazette were actually the first place the earliest place where I could find Kissinger's international seminar recruiting potential young global leaders for the future. For those who don't know, Kissinger's international seminar would really was the prototype for Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders program, and Klaus Schwab actually went through the program. And it was one of the first places they were looking to recruit was Pakistan, because I think they were looking to destabilize it, to stop potential Soviet infiltration of that region. What? How do you feel about Pakistan then? I mean, it must be complicated.
Johnny, it is complicated, and I just got to say, I can't comment on it. I can't comment on the current situation. It's not safe for my family, and it's not safe for me, the way that the current regime has been conducting itself.
Yeah.
So,
Do you ever go back into the history of Pakistan and
yeah, I
properly?
remember the first time I went back for a month, loved it so much, came back, earned some money, and then went out there and stayed out there for 7 months. just had a fabulous time. Food is great, weather is great, my family are great, just bathing. And I spent my time just reading, reading and reading and reading and reading, including reading books about how Pakistan, India came to be, partition, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that never I couldn't understand why they call Bangladesh East Pakistan at the beginning, and I never really worked out. Did you
It was
know?
one nation.
But it was separated by how many thousand miles? So,
No, by several thousand miles of this hostile neighbor, right?
yeah.
And they just divorced from, right, this ex partner or whatever, right, had a very acrimonious divorce, and they were in the middle. And then what happened, I think it was in 1970 or 1972, there was an election, and East Pakistan, they
Mhm,
should that the party, the Awami League, they should have been ruling over both territories.
mhm,
But the Punjabis, who are the dominant force in West Pakistan, weren't going to be ruled over by some Bengalis, they
mhm.
decided. And that led to the a secession movement. India came in on the side of East Pakistan, and out of that was birthed Bangladesh.
Okay,
West
right.
Pakistan became Pakistan.
And that was during the election of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, he
Yeah, and
refused to concede to the Awami League. Now, one of the things about this that I can comment on is the nefarious nature of the British imperial elites. Wherever they go,
pretty
wherever they
nefarious.
leave, right, they leave a little bit of territory that they can shit stir with. So
Hmm.
Kashmir between India and Pakistan, East and West Pakistan, Israel as a colonial outpost for the British imperial elites, and Northern Ireland. The idea that Catholics and Protestants can't live together.
Hmm.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's I mean in Britain though, historically we had I think a lot of that. I think the British maybe that experience of the moment where uh, King Henry VIII's son Edward died when he was only about 17 years old, caused a succession crisis in the UK, which led to I think it's about 1553, which led to Mary Tudor taking to the throne and turning everything Catholic all of a sudden, and it just went mad. And then, and of course, Henry VIII had already got rid of all the monasteries in Britain, and then Queen Elizabeth comes in after bloody Queen Mary and restores order. And I think that moment of destabilization gave them lots of ideas for how to destabilize other regions too, because that's the moment where you see like organizations like the Merchants Adventurers Company being sent out by Queen Elizabeth I to colonize places like Ireland and other places with Protestant rulers over Catholic folk, and then causing trouble. I mean, even before Hegel, they understood the
Wow.
thesis and the antithesis, you know.
Johnny, I just think you're amazing. The way that you dig into stuff and your recollection of all this detail. I want to have you on my channel talk about the stuff that you've done with Epstein, but the way that you dig out particular strands that have largely been obscured from our view that we don't know about, I think it's just an incredible service and speaks volumes of your prowess in research.
You're kind. You're very kind. But I mean, it's like with anything, is if you've got a passion for something, you can remember it. And what I've got a passion for is finding those moments in history that tell us about the here and now, that repeat the patterns repeating. And
Right.
and then what we're talking about here, where you're saying the idea that Catholic and Protestants can't live together. Well, I know that's not true. You know that's not true. But let's build a wall in the middle of a city and turn them against each other.
Yeah.
That was the British Empire, and it really hadn't. It didn't start there. It started a long time before a lot of it. So looking through history, you always find these moments, these times that reoccur reoccur
Mm.
and cause the whole momentum to go again and the cycle to revolve and revolution to continue. And I mean, when we were talking about Pakistan there, that was really what Pakistan's been experiencing is the effects of British meddling over hundreds of years, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And the divide and rule, setting one community against another. But then what Pakistan is experiencing is, I think, is also what's happening in Britain, which is impending, well, it's actually happening, monetary collapse. The debts aren't payable, and the
Mhm.
governments have maxed out on their credit cards. So, in order to hold on to control, they have to destroy our independence, our sovereignty, self-sufficiency. And then when you were talking about history repeating itself, well, what Keir Stalin is doing with the farmers is what his namesake Stalin did in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Centralize all the farming, draw the power upwards, and it led to food shortages.
Mhm.
So,
And it goes back to like the nobility doing the same back in the days of kings and queens of old as well, how they had barons who robber barons who were stealing from all of the farmers and controlling it all for the elites. I mean, this cycle goes on throughout time. So you were born in Pakistan. When did you move to when did your family come to Britain?
okay, I was 5 years old, many, many years ago.
Yeah,
At
yeah, yeah.
least 16
You
years
don't
ago.
want to give you don't want to give away your age. At least
At
16,
least
did you say?
16. At least 16 years ago, Johnny.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. And what was that like? I mean, Britain was a complicated place as it was. Racially, it's changed, and culturally, it's changed massively since those times in the late 90s when you first came over. But no, since the time when we were young.
Mm.
Things have changed massively, especially along racial divides. How was your experience growing up? Was it
I mean, it
relatively?
was okay. I grew up in London.
Mhm.
I went to a school where 55% of the kids were African Caribbean. The next rump were Gujaratis from India, Hindus. The next rump were Irish Catholic. Actually, I remember in the late 70s, this was before I was born, of course, Johnny, but in the late 70s,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
National Front were marching through, doing their marches in London, one kid from our school went on an NF march, showed his face to camera, that would broadcast on the local news, comes back to school on Monday. It's not good. It's not
Yeah.
good for him at all. But it was largely fine. And then, later on in life, I went to university in Bradford. I went to Bradford because they had a swimming pool on campus.
Oh wow, that would drive me towards it too. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
swimming pool type of
Bhangra,
guy.
Bhangra music and great curry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
When you're considering which university to go to, those are the important things.
Yeah, no, most definitely, especially the good curry. I mean, it's something that my dad was, but not even my dad, my granddad. My granddad used to run a local pubs in Cardiff, two different pubs. He was a landlord of a very in a rough area called Ely, in a place called the Dusty Forge, where you to get thrown out. If you got thrown out, you got taken up the back stairs upstairs and you got kicked down the metal staircase so that you remember not to come back again. And they had to steal the furniture back every night, and that's no joke. I mean, it was really a rough place. But later on, he went to a more studenty pub to run a more student pub in a student area, and he was well known for taking all the staff for a curry after work because the curry shops in Cardiff. I mean, we've always Wales is very,
Great curry in Cardiff.
yeah, it's a very open place. We've not had the same. The only community that got segregated in Cardiff was a Somali community in the late 80s and early 90s. They came over, they all got dumped in the same place, and it became a ghetto.
Mhm.
And you couldn't even walk through there. Years went by, and of course, that ghetto got demolished. People got driven out into all the different areas, and then it was possible to enjoy Somali curries too, you know. It was possible to mix with that culture. But I think Indian and Pakistani culture had already become endemic in British life by the late 70s and early 80s. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
A lot of my friends were from places like India and Pakistan in school, and I always found it was a different way, the different way in culture. I used to go over to my friends' houses, and we'd stay up all night playing Mortal Kombat or whatever on the Mega Drive, and then we'd go to sleep in his room, and he had like the whole family slept in the same room, and that
Mm.
was a really weird like sort of thing for me. It was like 8, 9 people all sleeping in the same room together, and that was a bit strange. But other than that, it was just like I always found that they were there was a lot of harmony between the community, and most of it was because of food.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Good food, which was one of the reasons why I think the British went colonizing because they had enough of boiled cabbage. Can we have some spice, please?
Yeah, come on, let's go find the spicy places. So what was that like growing up? You grew up in London. What did you do? Did you go to university?
Yeah, I went to university as a mature student to study social work degree.
Ah, right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went later on. What did you do
Yes.
out of did you go to college or did
I went,
you
Johnny, I failed my A-level exams 3 times in a row.
sounds
My
like something
brother
I
was a
do.
dean. My mum was a university lecturer teaching teaching English to MA students.
Mhm.
My grandfather was a professor. Everybody in my family's got degrees. But I messed about at school. I messed about and didn't have any A levels, failed them 3 times in a row. Third time I didn't bother even turning up for the exams because I hadn't studied. And
Mhm.
that was my time at college. I didn't actually go to college really,
Yeah.
but I was enrolled.
I had the same experience. I went for like 3 years. They wouldn't let me do. I wanted to do history and English, which now with what I do for in my journalism makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to go. I was interested in that, but they wanted to try out these new courses, these GMVQs. They was the first year they'd been running it, so they were like, "We won't let you do this. You have to do leisure and tourism." And so I was, yeah, I know. And then it got me a job. I mean, I went into work in like a 5-star hotel within the moment. I didn't turn up for nearly all of the lessons. I didn't actually get a proper qualification. I passed a couple of units only because my good teachers let me. But my whole family unit was breaking down at the time. There was loads of stress, and I didn't really study at all. I had the same
Mm.
experience of you. I was in college for 3 years and left with nothing, but because I had done leisure and tourism, they gave me a job in a hotel, and that was
Yes.
it. And you had to work your
Yes.
way up. So where did you work your way up from? What type of
So,
job?
well, I did unqualified social work. Actually, what happened was a couple of girlfriends of mine, like sequentially, uh, turned out.
Sequential girlfriends, not
So
girlfriends that
like
you had at the
I
same
was going out
time.
with this one girl, yeah, not at the same time. Then I finished and I was going out with another girl. Turned out they were being sexually abused by
Oh,
relatives. They told me I helped them out.
mhm.
I found an agency that supported women who and children who are being sexually abused. And then a friend of mine said, "Have you thought of being a social worker?" And I said, "What's that?" She brought me a leaflet. I had to look at it and I thought, oh, that sounds like. She said, "Look, you like helping people. Why don't you do this?" So then I had to get a certain amount of, because I didn't have any A levels, I had to get experience, unqualified experience in homes with adults and children with learning disabilities. And then I went to university.
That's
And
a hard one. I mean, I worked with kids with learning I worked in kids with kids who were really far on the spectrum, non-verbal, some violent. Is that the type of stuff you did early on
yeah,
in
I
London?
didn't do the really severe ones. I did ones that were like borderline. They needed some support with functioning.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. I had one. I looked after one kid who he would honestly he would see a girl in frilly socks. He was about 16, 17. He'd see a girl in frilly socks, and his head would go to the side like that, and then he'd put his hand inside his own arse, and he would use his poo as a weapon against you and would chase you around because he was so turned on
Oh my
by little girls in socks. I mean, that was a really hard person
I
to
bet.
look after.
I bet.
And so, some of the kids were non-verbal and bitey and, very bitey, and you had to learn how to do safe restraint. So that sounds nice. That sounds like you chose the right path.
I did. Well, at some point, I did get. Thought I had enough of bodily fluids, so I moved
No one's
over.
had enough of bodily
I've had
fluids.
enough of bodily fluids.
You've got loads of bodily fluids, don't
I
lie.
don't want them. You keep them, right? I don't want any more
Yeah,
bodily
okay. I
fluids,
don't want
right?
your bodily fluids.
That's right. That's right. So then I went and did a social work degree,
Mhm.
and I did very well, surprisingly well in my social work degree, despite the fact that I was very bolshy and troublemaker, missed a year of my course,
You look
argued
the
with the
type, yeah.
lecturers. And actually was, I got to say something, is I did a course called the Landmark Forum. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
My mum used to be a teacher. She's passed away now. She was a teacher. A colleague told her about it. She told my sister. My sister did it. And then my mum and my sister said, you do it. And what happened was in the third year of my third class, I had a row with the lecturer about race and racism. White people, what are you saying, right, about Cornish people? You don't know what you're talking about, Cornish people getting racism. And I, in my arrogance, giving him a lecture about imperialism and slavery and all of that, I decided department's really racist. I ain't gonna go to classes no more. So I
Were
didn't.
you a woke liberal?
I was pre-woke.
A pre-woke
I'm
liberal?
now disgusted by woke. I
I
was
know, I know, I know.
pre-woke.
We've all been there, man. We've all been there.
Yeah.
It's called
But
being young.
that's right. So then I I just bunked off and took the year next year out, went on holiday, went to Mauritius, Pakistan, Portugal, did some social work in London, come back in October, I got my final exams in January. I've never done well in exams anyway. Nobody wanted me to do social work. You know, what Pakistani does a social work degree for crying out? They want
Hmm.
me a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or something like that, right? And then my mum and my sister said, do the landmark forum. I said, well, I'll do it after my exams because I got to study. No, 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 do it before. So I did it before. It was a weekend course. It's online now, but I did it in London. And it's all about causing breakthroughs in communication, productivity, integrity, relationships. So I put on the form I wanted to do well in my studies. Did the landmark forum in November, sat my exams in January. I had four exams. And in my first exam, I was so relaxed. I wrote a letter to God thanking him for my life.
Oh, that's nice.
I wrote the
And in
letter.
the last exam, you took it all back.
No, no, I was just really relaxed, right? And my coursework was always good. Exams, I was no good. And then my results came out in March. Walked over to the department, got the results, came back to halls, rang up my mum, said, Ummi Jan, I've got a first class honours degree. So I went from being an exam failure, university dropout to a first class honours student in
Hmm.
2 months of study, and I didn't study hard.
Wow.
So it was that sort of breakthrough result. So I'm now a qualified social worker. So I start doing that in London, and then I keep training and developing myself with Landmark because I had ridiculous results out of that. I don't talk about this often on my channel. And
Mm.
in the end, I went to work for them in London for 8.5 years. I still do voluntary work for them.
It sounds like a really good way to that they. I mean, that's what I was desperate for when I was young, is someone to say, there's another route to you gaining employment that is worth it, that hones your own spirit without you having to um do something that seems completely and utterly unreachable. They give you an ability to attain that, and that must have been life changing.
Oh, completely. But the way that it works is I got to see things about myself that were hidden from my view.
Mm.
So the way the program works is like I got to have insights about myself. Now, Johnny, I can't give you an insight about you. I can give you my opinion. It may be accurate, it may be useful, it probably won't be, right? You may listen, you may not listen. It may be relevant, who knows, right? But when I see something about myself, oh, it
Mm.
resonates and I can't unsee it. and then
Yeah.
I have a choice. So one of the things I got to see in the Landmark Forum is like, oh, oh, I'm really arrogant.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have told me. Try telling an arrogant person they're arrogant.
Mhm.
See, let me know how well that went.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But when I see it for myself, it's like, I kill relationships through my arrogance.
Mhm.
So now I can do something about it. And I started telling my friends and families, look, I just realized that I'm arrogant. Oh, thank bloody goodness.
It's something I was talking to someone who's she's a lovely girl who lives in my area. Her and her boyfriend do music, and she's seriously lacking in confidence. And I was explaining to her that the only way I just like I gave her as much advice as I possibly could because I've been through severe anxiety, I've been through all of that sort of stuff. I've been lacking in confidence myself. And I was like, you've got to look at all of the things about yourself and what you do and all of the things you don't want to face. And you've got to face them. You've got to go into turmoil. You've got to go into trauma. You've got to go through the rigors and you come out the other side confident. Whether you like it or not, once you know yourself and you've looked at yourself properly, you have to come to terms with yourself, your weaknesses, your failures, and it's not a bad thing. It actually makes you feel really good, like you're saying here, to discover you are arrogant because
Yeah,
it gives you the ability to change that about yourself.
yeah, to be responsible for it. And I think, was it the real mastery is mastery over self?
Mhm,
And that only comes when I see aspects of myself that are hidden from my view.
mhm,
But the challenge is, well, how do I do that? How can I see my blind spots? And then how can I see the blind spots that I'm blind to?
mhm.
Oh,
That's like yeah, that's ultimate chi moments, isn't it? Those are the moments where you've hit enlightenment, a new plane of enlightenment, and then you realize that you've got to go on to the next plane of enlightenment. As
yep.
soon as you take the step up, then you realize there's steps, and you got to keep taking the steps, and it doesn't make any difference. So, how old were you by then?
I was 28.
And so, would you say that's probably about the right time to start finding yourself?
I don't know. I don't know, Johnny. I
Because I
really
feel that's
don't.
the time when I started finding myself.
I think, like, was it, we don't really become fully adult till mid-20s. And perhaps as men, we're never ever really fully adult. There's
Mm.
always that.
Yeah, I don't, I think it would be really bad to go full adult. You, you end up
Perhaps,
in well, with a board showing the world behind you, about to take over the world. That's what happens if you
yeah,
go full adult.
perhaps men never really get there or in any meaningful way. But
So, I mean, how did you get into the whole crypto world? What made you walk towards this whole thing of it, like becoming part of the media in that sense?
well, so I did a lot of work at Landmark, a lot of their courses. I led some of their courses. I lead a mini workshop for them now, currently on a volunteer basis. And there was a particular course they did called Money and Success. And it's not about like, oh, this is how you invest in stocks, this is how you invest in property and become a landlord. It's not that. What is it about me and how I operate with regards to money that I can't see? Like if I asked you, Johnny, how do you manage your money? What do you think about money? You tell me. I'm good at saving and
Badly. All of it's
whatever
badly.
it was, right? Well, what is it about you and money that's hidden from your view? Because that's where the insights happen.
Mhm,
Ah, that's what's going on. So I'm doing this course, and one of the things I realized, I don't know where money comes from. It never occurred to me that I didn't, because it's just there.
mhm,
We just earn it and spend it. I get money, or when I go to work, I earn it and then I pay for things with it. But that's never ever been a conversation. Where does it come from? Who decides that this has value and that doesn't have value? So I took on a project this was in 2011. I took on a project to start learning about money. Who decides? Where does it come from? And so I learned a little bit about the history of money, not as detailed as you, because I'm more interested in what's happening right now, what's going to happen in the future, with some references to the past to see how we got here. Um, so then, I came across gold and silver. I got to distinguish the difference between fractional reserve banking, fiat currency, and real money, gold and silver. And then at some point in 2012, I came across this new digital form of money called Bitcoin.
Dangerous. Good time to come across it, though.
Yeah, well, yes, but there was very little information about it. So then in the beginning of 2013, I'm following it. I came across Bitcoin when it was $5. And I'm following it, following it, following it. And in 2013, up to $15. And my wife and I, all right, we'll throw some money at it. No more than we're willing to lose and see how it works out. So
Yeah,
so we
well,
threw some money at it. Not enough.
mhm,
Never, it's never enough. Should have
yeah.
always bought more in the past, right? I left it alone in a hardware wallet for a few years. I come back in 2015. Oh, oh, this is interesting. And then in 2016, I started thinking about, well, how can I get into this blockchain world?
Mhm.
Now I'm a qualified social worker. I can't code. I have no interest in learning how to code. I'm not that. So, well, I just start a YouTube channel. And then it was like, well, what will I do? I don't know. And then it occurred to me that the audience is so large. Somebody is going to want to hear what I've got to
Mm.
say,
Yep.
which is amazing, right?
Mhm.
Completely amazing that some people out there actually are interested in what I've got to say. So then I just started doing videos about what I was looking at and interested in, and it just grew from there.
Yeah, I think that that's a very difficult step for a lot of people, and it's something you identify there is very important. So when you're starting out on the independent media in any way, it's just doing it, not
Yeah.
having this fear that people won't like it or people are going to be horrible to you or etc. That's going to happen, whatever. You're not you. No place in life are you ever going to say stuff out loud and find that everybody's your fan, but you will find people who are attuned with you and are on the same journey. And that's what we're looking for, isn't it? We're looking for
Mm.
people who are on a similar journey who can help us along the way. And so, how quickly did that? I mean, how quickly did that escalate? Then, did you? How long?
Well,
Right.
that was April 2017. Then the Bitcoin bull run was getting going, and it was December, it reached a high of 17,000. The previous high in 2013 was 1,200. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. But then
Mhm.
17,000, right? And I just carried on. And of course, then it crashed down over the course of the next year down to 3,200. But I just carried on. I liked it.
Mhm.
And I was making okay money. Although I was still working as a social worker or doing sales. I've worked in sales as well. And so just carried on. And my channel got really big, 25,500 subscribers.
Mhm.
And then in June 2019, YouTube deleted 80 of my videos. Then in December, they deleted another
Whoa.
20, 80. I have
Did they
no
give you?
idea why.
Did they give you warning about this or anything?
Violated community guidelines. That's
What
what
were
they
you
told me.
violating community guidelines doing? Do you think? What do you think
I have
they
no
were?
idea. I might do a video. They deleted, say, I did a video, this hardware wallet. This is how it works. This is how you use it. Deleted. I did an interview with Reggie Middleton, who came up with a particular cryptocurrency called Veritasium. I posted that video in 4 parts. I posted it in June. And then later that year, I was traveling. I posted it again in December. They deleted part three of the second when I repeated it. Not part three,
Wow.
the first lot. I would do a video on this is what's happening with Bitcoin. This is where I think it's going to go. Deleted. Interview with this one, a sponsored video. No rhyme or reason. And they wouldn't give me any reason.
Do you think, because this is what I think was going on during that time, because we during that time the Alliance for Security is Securing Democracy out of the German Marshall Fund are introducing Hamilton 68 to Twitter, are starting to use AI to recognize potential threats in the media, whatever threat means to these neocons and people who are trying to manipulate our society and manipulate how we think. And I think they were testing this stuff out in places like YouTube, these algorithms. Do you think you just got like enough, yeah, enough of your videos hit the points on some sort of AI algorithm that then they just said, okay, we'll do better safe than sorry, and we'll just get rid of most of his videos. Do you think that's what
I,
happened,
I
or?
I have no idea why, Johnny. Those things that you mentioned, Hamilton and everything, I didn't know anything about. I know, was it 2016, 2017, that YouTube censored, they took Alex Jones off,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And then I know, they did more and more like somebody's, I think the Health Ranger had his entire channel taken off. The way that Dr. McCullough has been censored off YouTube.
Mm.
Right? And I'd see other crypto vloggers being censored, but others who were smaller than me or bigger than me, many others, they didn't.
Yeah.
They'd post similar material and they didn't get censored. So quite possibly. But ever since then, my channel hasn't grown. It's actually gone down to 23,000
Mm.
because I'm losing viewers and I don't get the sort of views commensurate with a channel of my size.
Yeah. I think that I mean my recent work on Elon Musk and the behavioral insight team, Salah Kamanga, who was the head of YouTube back when these courses were running until about I think about 2014, where Anne Wojcicki from who had previously been 20 head of 23 and Me took over, and all of these guys were all within these were trained all within these groups like
Right.
Edge, etc. They were trained in behavioral insights, and I would assume that what this is part of um, what we don't see is that they're introducing this idea of behavioral economics in real time on these platforms to say we want to sway people's views, vision of what they see the world like. So we need to get rid of this and we need to get rid of that and we need to stop people talking about this and stop. So we don't understand why they decide certain videos are a threat, but they're going through this. They're deciding what they need to take out so that the behavior of people watching platforms changes to what they want. So
Right.
I would assume that's probably
Like,
go on.
like lowering, say, the conversation, it reduces the amount of videos that are, say, about using hardware wallets and about crypto. So then crypto doesn't get to grow, or that conversation, that discourse doesn't seem as large as other discourses, this new emerging
They can funnel
conversation.
people into certain channels that they control the narrative on. So they take away beforehand. People would be able to choose your video on a certain subject around Bitcoin, and would be that video is competing with 1,000 other people. But YouTube only agree with say five of that 1,000 people, and so say let's get rid of everything else, so that people have to, if they want to learn, they have to go to the ones that we agree with. And there's lots
Right?
of those. Now I talked with one guy. This is a really interesting. I've never even talked about this out loud. I don't this guy had I can't remember the channel name. His channel was massive views, well beyond the reach of what he was doing. He had maybe 20 videos. They all had 1 million plus views.
Wow.
I know. And they were fantastically made videos, often about people who were trending very early on. Really fantastically made videos, over the top. And I talked with this guy for about 3.5 hours. I felt like it was a bit of an operation, to be perfectly honest. Um, it never went up on his channel. Me and his conversation was all recorded, never went up on his channels, never went out at all. He told me a story that him and some of his friends had been testing out the algorithms of YouTube. And what they did is they worked out that they were subcontracting certain keywords, certain keyword searches, and certain parts of YouTube's censorship process were being outsourced to Saudi Arabia and other countries. And these were countries that were extremely strict Muslim countries. And so they were flagging things that said gay.
Mhm.
So if there was someone talking about being gay on YouTube, that would automatically demonetize their channel, and so was in that sense homophobic censorship. And so they went to YouTube and said, we've now, they were, what they were doing, they said they were uploading videos with just a few keywords and looking at which ones got demonetized
Mhm.
and seeing which keywords matched. And they were doing thousands of videos, but they weren't actually putting them up live. They were just watching how they got demonetized in real time. And then they were adding up which words it was. And then they went to YouTube and said, we know that you're demonetizing because of these words, including gay, homosexual, and things like that. And so YouTube agreed to unleash their channels and take the leash off completely. And so then they got millions of views.
Um,
And so if you catch YouTube out and then you approach YouTube, it seems that then they'll change the game. So the real game, what your channel should be, is millions of views. What your channel should be is loads of people interested, but they have all the mechanisms there to fix things. And what they're doing is they're changing it as they go along. As each time they have to jump over a hurdle, they change and refine it a little bit.
well, I
Oh,
noticed a difference. I've recently started posting my videos on X,
mhm.
and I get much, much better views there than I do on any other platform. So I've noticed that difference. And one of the things I'm curious about, and we spoke about this briefly before we started recording, is what is likely to happen with these social media platforms. Given now, X is not censorship free;
Mhm.
they still censor.
I call it Hamilton 69. They use whatever version of Hamilton 68. They're just using Hamilton 69 with their tongues deep inside you.
Okay, now you might have to explain that to me. Hamilton
Well,
69 with
Hamilton
a
68 was the censorship algorithm computer system that was used to censor people industrially on Twitter before Elon Musk. And when Elon Musk came in and they released the Twitter files, what they did is say, look at how they were censoring you. They were using this Hamilton 68 program that was run by these neocons out of this Harvard Institute called the German Marshall Fund, out of the Alliance for Security and Democracy, and they were censoring you on all of these different ways. But when Elon Musk came in, it looked like it opened up. They just changed the way the algorithms worked, and they created the next program for censorship. So they have an algorithmic censorship program running in the background, and it's just the next version of Hamilton 68, really. So that was, which is what the previous one was called. So I call it Hamilton 69. No, it's probably, yeah, officially it's not called that, but it's basically a 69. They got their tongue deep inside you. They know exactly what you're doing, and they're using censorship still.
But isn't the X code all open source now and people can see?
I don't believe any of that. Don't believe it, especially not with the addition of things like Grok and stuff. Those are some big, serious people involved in stuff like that. Not only Elon Musk, but I mean, Nicole Youngman was involved in Grok as well. Is invested in Grok along with a load of other intelligence assets. Is a fantastic way to rake data because people are constantly typing what's really on their mind and asking AI with this idea that it's only AI who's watching them, but really they're keeping notes, they're keeping tabs, they're building data sets on people, and they're understanding people's psychology so that AI can eventually redirect their behavior without them realizing. So I think there's a lot more going on Twitter now, and I don't believe that it's open source. I think there's a real big. I mean, I got when I did the Musk article, and Epstein, the third culture dossier. They flagged that. They limited my reach all through the time that the article should be getting around. They stopped it from going out, so they used the same censorship profile. And I think there's a lot going on X at the moment. Some of it is more positive than what we experience on other social media platforms, but it should be even more positive again.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose. I mean, I don't know if BitChute uses an algorithm or not. More than likely they do, because there's some you and I can't look up Russia Today on BitChute, and then sometimes BitChute will say, "Oh, this is not available in your area because it's hate crime or something like that." Use a VPN, switch servers to the United States or Iceland, have a look at it. It's something completely innocuous, but they just don't want us to know. So there must be an algorithm. But I know BitChute is just really, really wild. It's gone really wild.
Yeah, that's an interesting. BitChute is an interesting page. I think it was a guy called Ray Vahi who originally was setting up BitChute, one of the ones, and they went in against BitChute very early on. They stopped them from being able to auto upload from YouTube for a while as well. They put some sort of court order, I think, out on them, and I found because yeah, what we were talking about before we went on air was what one of the things was what I think the next stage is going to be, and that's
Mm,
flooding the zone in PR speech. If you were to go back to event 201 before the pandemic, or just as the pandemic began in October 2019, there's a guy called Matthew Harrington who works for Edelman PR, which is the biggest PR firm in the world, representing nearly everybody. And they talked about how you can restrict information flow during the time of a pandemic by flooding the zone with information you want to be there. So you just put in way loads of information constantly all of the time. Well, when the previous forms of censorship had to look at how and what people were saying and had to define individually, do we censor this, do we censor that? Now they're coming to a point where they're working out the best way to censor is just to have everything out there. Such an abundance of information that you can't possibly look through it all, you can't possibly watch it all, you can't possibly get through it all. So that then that kind of hides, it obscures everything in amongst the flooded zone. And so
mm,
I think we're about to see that was what started with X. They started to say, oh, now with this free platform, look, and they invited everyone back, and you looked at the X spaces, and they were crazy Wild West lands. Some of the X spaces, you go on there, and it's just people who were banned for years under the previous administrations of these social media platforms, and have only been allowed to speak again recently. But they're all speaking all at the same time, and you don't know who to listen to, and people don't know who to listen to, and it's part of fifth generation warfare. And so I think that's going to happen on all platforms. And then you heard Trump during the campaign talking about this and saying, they're going to actually fine and put fines on companies that censor social media posts. And I think this is because the next plan for the intelligence services is to flood the zone with masses of information. And that's where we're
wow.
heading on all platforms. So then we'll have a different problem. We'll be lost in amongst the schools of fish that surround us. And that then enters into a new zone where I'm not sure if it's good or not. But
Mm,
people like you and I may benefit for a short amount of time before they change the form of censorship again. But the reason why they're doing this is because I think they know that the era of AI is coming where you can ask AI almost anything and it will give you an answer. And eventually those answers are going to be really inconvenient for those in power. So they want people to then go and search out that information to be lost within a sea of potential opinions and not be able to make up their own mind.
wow.
Mm.
Wow.
I know. Well, the paradigm's about to shift, and we've really been in the restricted part. We've gone through the restricted part, and I think it's all about to open up in the next few years, and we're going to see. And when you said BitChute was like the Wild West, I think everything's going to be like the Wild West soon.
Right, right. Because one of the things I've been wondering about is the impact of Trump's election on how will it impact the US, sorry, the UK and Europe.
Mm.
Apart from please, dear God, bring peace to Ukraine and stop the killing there. Um, but culturally, what is the impact? And I don't have an answer. It's just have this open question that, on the one hand, we've got Keir Starlin wanting to censor. I noticed, Johnny, you've been very careful. You've not said any hurty words so far, which is good. Hurty words are not allowed, but wanting to censor, people expressing concern about what's happening in their community, legitimate concerns, I must
Hmm.
say, right? Versus the sort of openness that you're talking about, versus what Trump has, this 6 minute clip where he's saying he's going to strengthen the First Amendment. People have access to VPNs. People have access to decentralized VPNs like Sentinel.co, which is just run by individuals. There's
Mm.
no central point of capture, and they're much, much cheaper than regular VPNs. That we will have access to information all over. When we're moving towards decentralization, how much control can a centralized entity exert?
Mhm. So I mean, if we look at it, there's an exponential increase in technological advancement. At the same time, there's that goes along line of censorship, the ability to censor. So the technology, as technology improves to censor, so does the style of censorship and the accuracy of said censorship. So what we've experienced, what you experience when you say, they brought down 80 videos on my platform, people have
160.
160, well, they brought down 160 videos. They would have been searching for certain words. So they would have AI programs and other things going through and just searching. And if that word appears, then they'll get rid of it. So the next stage, as that technology improves exponentially, the next stage is that it'll be looking for certain sentences and collection of words instead of just one word. And the context of that word will come up as the exponential increase in technology advances further. They'll be looking at context and then they'll be censoring under contextual terms. Not necessarily, that won't improve the information we get necessarily. It might still be that they're censoring whatever they don't want you to have context of.
Mm.
So and then eventually the technology will be good enough to be able to manipulate people and censor very directly and strictly and turn certain like people who are talking about truth within a context that can undermine their entire systems, they will turn those to the people who aren't going to necessarily care about that information. And so it's all an exponential increase of technology, and as technology improves, so does the ability for them to censor more accurately. So I think you experienced the first stages of that, the bits where
Yeah,
they're just recognizing a word and saying get rid of it.
yeah. But then also what increases is the technology that allows us to subvert their censorship or elude their censorship. Like, for example, it's Sentinel.co with their decentralized VPN. There's a vlogging platform, 3speak.tv, which is open source. It's built on the Hive blockchain, and Hive is a fork of Steam. Then, if you know of Steam,
Mm.
which is very, very fast, and there were all these vlogging platforms and stuff like that. So here's a vlogging, hardly anybody knows about it because it's so small, but it's censorship resistant, and there's no organization behind it. There's no entity or foundation.
Do you think this is what we're going to see more of, like decentralized information sharing?
I think so. I think it's inevitable because of the nature of human spirit.
Mhm.
Johnny, do you ever know? Do you know about the critical mass rights?
Go on, explain.
So when I was living in London, I used to go to them quite regularly, and they happen in cities all over the world. So in London, it used to happen one Friday of each month. I don't know if it's still going on. And the first time I came across it was a Friday evening. I'm in my car with my wife, and there are these hundreds of cyclists out of nowhere. Hundreds of cyclists. And
Damn
they,
them.
they're just a massive cyclists, and the cars have to slow down because they're taking over the road. And that was my first encounter with a critical mass bike ride. And then I used to join them because I love cycling. And the deal with critical mass is it's on a particular Friday of each month. They meet, people meet, and then they cycle around. But they're cycling, sometimes in the summer you could have 1,000 cyclists, just like on all sorts of shades of bikes and stuff like that. And people got sound systems on their bicycle, and there's no route. Somebody's at the front says, okay, let's go this way. So they all go this way. The police tried to shut it down.
Of
They
course they
couldn't
did.
because
Yeah.
there's no organization behind it. There's
Mm.
no route. It just gets posted somewhere on Facebook or wherever. We'll meet at this point, and then they set off and off they go.
Yeah, that's the future of protest.
Yeah. So how will they stop that? And I think the process that they're using, or the tactics that they're using to bring about Agenda 2030, the Great Reset and everything, they'll do a lot of damage, but they will fail because you cannot crush the human spirit because of the nature of decentralization and because it's so energy intensive. It consumes so much energy, human capital, fiat currency to maintain such a centralized authoritarian system.
Mhm.
It just falls apart. It's like the Blade Runners in London. You can buy
Love
an
them.
angle grinder for 100 quid.
Love them. Love them. I love these guys. It's just my type of stuff. I could watch those videos all day long.
That's right. For people who don't know, that in London they're building up this surveillance network
Yeah,
of cameras,
ULEZ surveillance.
ULEZ,
Yeah.
yeah, low traffic networks and everything. They say it's in order so that we don't die of climate change. Of course, they want to kill us by some other means, right? And it's guys in hoods and sweat tops and balaclavas. They buy £100 angle grinder, chop down one of those cameras. Well, the local authority, I don't know how much it cost them, a few
Mhm.
£1,000s at least to replace it. Well, the angle grinder, one-off capital expense. Here we go again.
Yeah. It's the way they stopped in France when, and I've explained this a couple of times on different shows, and when I moved to France, it was about 2005, 2006. I moved to Lyon. I met a French girl and was just like, you know how it goes. You get love bubbles in your eyes, and oh, this is it. I'm gonna move away down to near the Alps. It was beautiful and stuff. They had just they had introduced over in London. They'd already been using what do they call them to lock car wheels? Um,
The clamps.
yeah, wheel clamps. They'd been using wheel clamps in London, and it'd been wreaking havoc all over the place, and everybody was getting really angry with it. And in France, it just didn't work. They had tried the same thing just before I had moved to France, and what all of the French did was buy super glue and put super glue in all the locks. So the actual wheel clamp locks that the clampers would use to take off the wheel clamps, they couldn't use them. The clamps would be filled with super glue, and they couldn't get the keys. So they'd have to go and they'd have to angle grind their own clamps off the vehicles they've clamped. And of course, that meant there's just no point. There's no business in clamping, and they just stopped clamping cars. In
Wow.
London, they were still clamping cars. All the people in London had to do was get super glue and stick it in the locks, and boom, you've got the ULEZ, the Blade Runners. You don't even have to get Blade Runners anymore. You just get the people who have to go and grind off the locks of the clamps anyway.
Wow.
And maybe that's something. There's a way to do that with the ULEZ cameras as well. But really, it is about the fact of making that type of And I should probably be a little bit careful. To those listening on YouTube, you should never do such things. You
Don't do
naughty,
anything illegal.
naughty
No,
people. Naughty, naughty
no,
people.
no, 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 no.
But
We're
to
not
everyone else on
advocating
every other
anything like that.
platform, have your way. Enjoy. Just for YouTubers, just behave yourself because mummy's watching. Big Mother is watching you. And yeah, there's an element of this where I think it's just that's the indomitable nature of the human spirit. You can't really stop it. You're right. I believe that protests will only work once we stop following their rules to protest, and we make their ability to control and coerce our protest almost completely impossible.
Yes, yes. And I was talking to somebody the other day who told me something. I don't know if it's accurate or not, right? But it makes sense. That the anti-lockdown protests, which I was a regular on, got so large, like 800,000 or something, that it just couldn't be ignored. No coverage on the mainstream media, right? But the government would have noticed, and it
Mhm.
was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think, that was a major victory in terms of us ensuring our sovereignty.
Mhm.
And ever since then, I just think they're scrambling, trying to maintain their targets for this massive project. Excuse me a second.
At the same time, they're cutting the police, the numbers of police. They're systematically trying to undermine the systems that keep us chained and replace them all with some form of AI drones. Well, AI drones who are watching over the top of you aren't going to be able to do anything about the protests that happening like in of those in at that scale. They won't be able to do anything unless they start threatening your personal safety or your health.
Yeah.
And the likelihood is we'll see the same thing that happened in Canada during the trucker protest, which is they bring in and ship in loads of private security to replace the police.
Well, I know in Ireland, because I do a fair amount of coverage of what's happening in Ireland, and I think
Hmm.
Ireland is much further along than we are. And we're
Hmm.
recording this on Friday, the 29th of November. Please, dear God, I hope the Irish people vote for freedom-loving, sovereigntist, Irish patriot parties in massive numbers.
Hmm.
That it can't, none of the established parties that are all owned by the WEF. But in Ireland, I know one of the things they were doing is the Irish government are recruiting, going to Pakistan to recruit police officers. So then they bring them over, and then you've got Pakistanis policing the local community,
Classic.
which which the British, they had the Muslims police the Hindu communities, and the Hindus police the Muslim
So
communities.
dirty. It's so dirty. They're
No.
dirty, dirty. And they have to go back to their colonies to be able to coerce them into doing what they want.
Yeah. And Johnny, I don't think anybody can accuse me of being racist or anti-Pakistani in this.
Yeah, 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 most
But
definitely.
hell no, hell no. They're doing that in order to destroy. I mean, that's one of the things that really gets my goat that I'm passionate about. They're doing that to destroy local culture,
Mhm.
local tradition. I joined the anti-apartheid movement when I was 18 because I was horrified to discover about apartheid and everything, and then what they're doing to African people, black people in South Africa. And I'm like, well, their traditions are worth preserving. Well, the same deal for white people in Europe.
Mhm.
Same people for the Irish, for the Swedes, for the English.
Yeah.
It's
The-
like one of the things I want to say that I'm passionate about is what shapes my work, my channel, my social work, is I'm up for a world where human beings honor human beings,
there
regardless
we
of all the
go.
nonsense that they use to divide us.
It's something that come up in another conversation I had recently, a couple of conversations. We want to see authentic rule. We want to see authentic humans caring for authentic humans. We
Yeah.
want to see authentic humans in power. We want to have conversations about what's really going on in society. And instead, what we've got is manipulation galore. And there is, again, technological solutions come by that change paradigms And this is a paradigm that's well up for a shift, or is at least coming towards a shift, because there is going to be a point where um, technology will be able to tell whether you're lying or not. Whether
Right.
you and I can't even think that that could be enacted retrospectively. And even if you don't believe the results that you're seeing perfectly, are perfect, it certainly is going to make you doubt a lot of people that are in power.
You mean Keir Starlin's? What are you suggesting, that he's a liar? How can you
Mm.
say that, Johnny?
I wouldn't say he's a liar. He's part of the Trilateral Commission. They've never lied to anybody in their
Never
life, have
lied
they?
all his
There's
life,
no
right?
no Rockefeller Institute has ever used disinformation, misinformation, or malinformation. How
No,
dare you? So for the people who are watching YouTube, remember the Trilateral Commission are your friends. Okay, tell the YouTube bosses I said that. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Hopefully they'll give me 1 million views. Uh,
that's very good, Johnny. I want to go back to something you mentioned that I want to expand on, which was about going back to law. Look, because I've done a fair amount of work about lawful tax protest, and
mm,
I've interviewed a couple of people recently and found out even more
tell me.
because um, and I can share my own personal story, and I invite people to take this on. And the website to go to bit.ly/ lawful tax protest, or bit.ly/ make war history. Both of those will take you to probityco.com. It, I don't know if you and I have ever spoken about this, Johnny. We may have in passing or in short, right? But I got a bit more time now, I think, right? It is illegal, Johnny. Every time you pay your a parking ticket, speeding ticket, bus lane violation, your TV license, your council tax, capital gains tax, income tax, VAT, any of the 235 taxes that we have to pay in the UK, you are breaking the law. It is illegal to pay tax. So
Mhm,
stop it.
mhm. I like
Now,
I love the idea of this, but it makes people's hair stand up on end like they've been trained to, and it makes them scared that they're going to have the taxman come running through their door straight away.
yeah, well, let me say a few things about this, right? So, International Criminal Court Act and the 2001 and the Terrorism Act 2000 make it a criminal offense to give any money directly or indirectly to any agency that facilitates war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and acts of terrorism. The U there the UK government is not exempt from the provisions of their statutes.
Mhm,
And what I found out is most statutes they don't have a clause that covers everything. But in, I think it's the International Criminal Court Act, Section 78, that says that this applies to all Crown agencies and its
mhm,
employees as
mhm,
it applies to anybody else.
mhm,
The Supreme Court has ruled that these laws apply to the military and quasi-military activities of the UK government, even when sanctioned by Parliament.
ooh,
There's no get out. There's no get out. So what I did using the Probity Code process, I downloaded a trust document. Now people go like, what's a trust document? It's really, really simple. This is how what the rich use to avoid paying tax. And Probity Code, it's created by a anti-war campaigner. It's very easy to fill in. I downloaded it, put in my name details, signed it, got somebody to witness it, said how much I owed in capital gains tax. I sent the copy of this document to HMRC. I sent it in November last year. I didn't send them any money. I said, here's a trust document. You are the HMRC, you are the primary beneficiary. If by January 31st, 2024, you can demonstrate that none of this money will be used for the purpose of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, or acts of terrorism, as defined by those statutes. If you don't do it by January 31st, those funds will go elsewhere to the secondary beneficiary, which can be anybody I want, but it's in this instance was me.
Hmm.
Now, once I've created the trust, the money's not mine anymore. It belongs to HMRC. But the trust says that they have to demonstrate they're acting consistent with statute.
Hmm.
So I'm not evading the law or anything. No, I want to make sure you're acting lawfully.
Hmm.
Because according to those statutes, if you're HMRC, Johnny, you ask me for payment,
Damn, you've rumbled me.
you're breaking the law.
Uh-huh.
And if I give you that money, I'm breaking the law. Because one of the clauses is if I have reasonable cause to believe, to suspect that some of that money will be used for terrorism. And what the government is doing by dropping bombs on people in Yemen,
Hmm.
by supporting what's happening in Israel versus lobbying for peace, by supporting what's happening in Ukraine and Russia versus lobbying for peace,
Hmm.
it's that's illegal. So then I had a series of letters, correspondence with HMRC, and I said to them, am I exempt from these provisions? And the deed lays out the statute, the particular provisions. Am I exempt from these provisions? Are you exempt from these provisions? They kept evading.
Yeah.
They just kept evading. You have to pay taxes that are due lawfully. Great, I want to pay my taxes. I want to
Hmm.
do it. I just want to act consistent with statute. So tell me, because otherwise I'm breaking the law by giving it to you, and you're breaking the law by asking me for it.
Hmm.
And in the end, I sent him an affidavit, which is a sworn, for people who don't know, it's a sworn statement of truth that I've had all this correspondence. They've never once told me, given me any exemption whatsoever. This matter is now settled. I've paid it by trust. I'm not going to break the law here.
Hmm.
They said you have to pay. They replied, and then I said to them, you haven't rebutted my affidavit.
Hmm.
An unrebutted affidavit stands as truth in
Hmm.
law,
Oh,
and that
that's interesting.
I haven't heard anything from them. And I know, Johnny, as a child protection social worker, right? So I would, let's say you got kids. I come to you and I say, listen, I want to see your kids. I want to speak to them at school without you there. And you can say, well, they're my kids. I don't give you permission. And I say, well, that is your right. I cannot see your children without your consent,
Hmm.
except I have an exemption under Section 47 of the 1989 Children's Act, because my manager and the police have discussed this, and we're now implementing that. So I don't need your permission.
Hmm.
And then I can go and tell the school, I don't have parents' permission. I'm exercising this order. I see the kid. So I know to give an exemption where I have one. They didn't give me one because there isn't one. And then I found out some more. HMRC was created in 2005. It's a creature of statute,
Hmm.
which means it's born out of statute and has to abide by statute. And it's honor bound to do so. So they can't go outside of statute. Then I'm enforcing this, the 1627 petition, right of petition, which is unrepealed, still in force. I cannot be fined, coerced, or punished for acting lawfully.
Hmm. So what's the downside of this though? Because I talked with one person who described a system like this. It might be this system, but they've like with slight nuances or differences. And they said if you do this, you can no longer use the systems like National Health Service, the dole, things like that. Is that true?
No, I mean, there's all sorts of different ways, right? People reclaiming your legal fiction, the stuff I don't know about, haven't got into. This is purely statutory.
Hmm.
It's within the
Hmm.
existing legislative framework.
Yeah, yeah.
And now, with all the stuff that's going on at international level, Netanyahu's a war criminal. This government are providing reconnaissance flights for Israel. Johnson coming out the other day saying it's actually a proxy war against Russia, owning up to it. Him stopping the peace agreement 2 months into the war. And my point of view is like, no matter how much hardship I have to face, it's a minor compared to what people in Ukraine and Yemen
Hmm.
and Israel are facing. And
Yeah.
then I always have the option, if it gets too hairy, okay, you can have the money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So the downside is it's been a learning process for me. The paperwork that it's taken, as I've learned, but I've seen how I can shortcut it.
Hmm.
So this applies for council tax, this applies for BBC TV license, and I would love farmers to discover this process
Yeah, oh,
because
yeah.
paying inheritance tax is illegal.
Mm, that is very interesting.
And I've not been able to I've not managed to find a farmer who's willing to come on and I can have this conversation and I would support them. I would do it through them because farming is so important because
Mm.
it gives us food.
So, do you think people are just scared of the risk of taking on the government just because the unknowns are so many?
Yeah, and I think well people are trained. You know about the fleas in a jar?
Hmm.
That you keep fleas in a jar and you put the lid on, they'll only jump so high. You take the lid off, they don't jump any higher. They don't jump out because they're trained. And I think schooling trains us. And that you and I, Johnny, we didn't have those injections, the safe and effective injections, because this is YouTube, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah, yeah.
chose we chose unsafe, ineffective means of maintaining our
Yeah,
health.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I smeared myself with vitamin C. There you
Did you? That's so
go.
unsafe and ineffective.
I
No one,
know.
no
I
wonder
know.
you're
I did
dead.
so many unsafe and ineffective things during that period that I actually had a baby as well. So, I mean, there you go.
Not you personally, right? Just so I'm clear.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Not
Yeah,
me
okay. All
personally.
right. So, so you and I didn't have those safe and effective injections, the ones without any long-term data, the
Yes, of course.
novel.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
didn't,
There was.
right?
That's my happy shudder
Yes.
for YouTube, just for YouTube people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because we questioned.
yeah.
Most people don't question. They just accept what they're told. But, for those watching this, if you don't question, then you're easily manipulated.
Mhm.
So you got to question because how do you know they're not lying to you?
Yeah. I, I, I.
Sorry, Johnny, just to take it back to the HMRC
Do
thing,
take it back.
digging into it, HMRC are bound to operate statute. The statutes are really, really clear. All they had to do was give me an exemption and give me a reference that this provision in this statute says that capital gains tax is exempt from these provisions. That's
Mhm.
all they had to do. But they didn't because they couldn't. It isn't there.
So, what do you expect to happen? Do you expect them to keep chasing you?
No, they've left me alone. I haven't heard from them for 2 months. I interviewed this guy who runs a couple of hair salons. He owes them. He told me it's at least 100,000 that he owes them. Corporation tax, his employees PAYE, which he's withheld on behalf of the employees, and that they will get it at the end of the financial year as a bonus. So I mean, it's several £100,000. He said, I haven't heard from them since February.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's very interesting. How many of these cases do you think they have at HMRC, do you think?
Not enough.
Not
Not
that is a good
enough.
answer. That's the best answer you can say. I agree. I agree. Not enough, and
Not enough. Because the
making
other
me
thing that's going
think.
to happen is
Mm.
that I think because the government are going to, I mean, their measures, their budget measures, destroying small businesses, destroying farming, increasing taxes, keep on money printing. So we are going to get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed.
Mm.
Things of everything are going to go up. So so even if you don't, even if you agree with any of the wars, hold on to your money because you're going to need it to pay for inflated milk prices.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Agreed with that.
So
Agreed.
I think the numbers are going to grow, just like they did with the injections. The number of people who weren't satisfied that these injections were safe and effective, those cynical folk, Johnny.
They're terrible, terrible human beings. All of them deserve exactly what they get. Peace, freedom, health. Who knows what they get? You know, all of the things that they get, they deserve. I tell you, it's brilliant. It's brilliant having these conversations because it leaves me. I mean, I listen to this and I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. But I also got this trepidation. I've been trained. I have been trained. I know it. I know that that's a downside. I know that the tax man is at the gates wanting tax from me, and I'm like, I don't like anything that I'm not getting back my legal rights in return. I'm getting run roughshod. So I think that it's probably right that I do that. But then the fear of it, the idea
Yeah,
of it, the process, it's just hard to get over the fear that they give you from birth.
but yeah, it's a little bit like, well, we have to step out because the alternative is much worse. You know,
Mhm.
I was working away from home during lockdown, staying away for 2 or 3 nights a week, doing social work in this other city. And there was all the talk about the mandates coming out, mandates. And one of my things was, what if they say you can't come into the council building unless you've had an injection? How am I
Mhm.
going? I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to have a safe and effective injection. I'm just not, right?
I
I
just
like
that's
to
not
live,
my style.
I like to live dangerously, right?
Yeah.
How am I going to provide for my family? And then at some point, and I was just keeping my head low because the push, mask up, social distance, I didn't care about that,
Mhm.
right? If I'd have met you, Johnny, and you'd be up for it, I'd hug you.
Mhm.
Consensually, of course, right? That's important. I
I don't
don't
mind a
believe
bit of unconsensual hugging. That's
you
fine.
may not, but I want to honor you.
Okay, okay.
All right.
You can hug me without my knowledge.
Fair enough.
Except on YouTube.
When you're not looking, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Steal a hug. Anyway, um, then I have to speak up. I have to, because if the alternative is much, much worse, and I have to speak up in order to find allies,
Hmm.
in order to form alliances with others. And it's the same deal with this, because unless we resist in whatever way we can, in whatever way works for us, then what, you want to eat bugs? You think that'll make you happy? With
Mm,
BlackRock owning everything,
mm.
owning all our farmland?
Yeah, I think they're telling us what makes us happy. They're going to keep telling us that we'll be happy
Yeah,
if you take all of our stuff. And maybe they're right. Maybe, maybe if we just give up all of our property and we can live like
all
yogis
our
in the park
freedoms,
and we'll be fine.
our autonomy. Do you know, Johnny, this is terrible. You sound like you've been groomed. I know you're joking with me. You don't really agree with that, right? With that sentiment, but it's like, oh yeah, well maybe if I just do what this my abusive partner tells me to, it'll all work out.
I'm automatically, I am seriously, I automatic. I realized this during the pandemic. What do you, I know this is a bit of like a pull a strand out your head, but when I think of the pandemic and that period of my existence, I think of like there's three or four different moments that really stand out to me that become emblematic. Do you have any of those moments? Something that is the first thing that pops into your head when you think about going through that period?
I remember being on a call with some really good friends of mine, and it suddenly twigged on me in this call. This was 6 weeks into the lockdown, and I was going along with social distancing and wearing masks and enforcing it in my house and everything when, we wouldn't have visitors and everything. And in this call, I suddenly thought, why am I just accepting what government and big pharma are saying without at least questioning and looking into it? And then I had an argument with my friends because they were like, no, you just got to go along and do as you're told. But that moment, and then also the lockdown demos, they were wonderful. Sorry, the anti-lockdown demos.
Mm.
Whoops, gave away the sort of demos. What do we want? More masks. When do we
No,
want them now? What do we want? More
no,
boosters.
no,
When do we... That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
Have me again, Pfizer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah,
the lockdown demos were just fabulous, absolutely
yeah.
fabulous. I would go to one, the anti-lockdown demos, go to London pretty much every month, meet up with my friends. We'd walk and talk together, and it was so morally uplifting to be with other
Hmm.
people because the way that the whole social distancing work and what they want to do is they want to atomize us, keep
Oh,
us
yeah.
separate, destroy our connection to religion,
It was
destroy our connection to culture, to our families.
it was really funny. There was about 4 or 5 of us in my local community who were subverting the system. Um, really easy during this period because we started like having community barbecues and things like that. This is the time when we should all stand in the park with a couple of barbecues and a load of food, and we should all have a conversation together. And this is the
Yes.
time and ignore loads of people weren't even talking about the scam that was going on at the time. They were all too busy going, oh, these are really nice sausages, oh, look at the doggies, etc. And they just got on, people started to get on with their life. When it first started, people looked devastated and afraid all of the time. And
Yeah.
I found I was having lots of different conversations in the park where I was just going, I experienced it twice. I experienced lockdown in Chile first, then came back to Britain just as the British lockdown started. And they went through the training or the testing of lockdown in places like Chile. So
Mm.
it was a really interesting way to experience it. There was so many different moments. When you were talking earlier, there was one moment in my head that was just reoccurring. It reoccurs over and over again, and it kind of is probably more me looking at the way that I interact with these sort of things. Because I went to Marks and Spencer's. It was a Marks and Spencer's store, and I was just going to have uh, the test so I could go travel. I needed to have the test so I could go back to Chile. And I went down to this place just across the road from it. There was this Marks and Spencer's, and I love their Chinese chicken wings. Always have done. You know, you can eat them cold, or they're tasty. And I've been eating them since my mum used to buy them for me every now and again, and I'd just be like, it'd be the best thing ever. So it always fills me with joy. And I went over to the Marks and Spencers, and it was like peak peak scam time. And it was a long line of people, and they were all masked up outside. And there was this woman she was like orchestrating it all. She was the manager of the Marks and Spencers, and she was saying, "Come on, everybody, line up, please, please. Can you move in? Can you move in as well? Can you put a mask on?" And I decided not. I couldn't join the line. I couldn't go through this rigmarole for some Chinese chicken wings. So instead, I just stood outside the store, probably about 5 meters away from this long line, and just watched it. Just watched how people behaved and how she treated people. I was just, wow, this is like the people find this automatic way to control other people during
Which
these
schooled.
times. You don't even need to be told. You don't even, they've already schooled. Yes, they're already schooled. They don't
Yeah.
even need to be taught how to do it. They don't even need to be told how to do. They get told, these are your restrictions. Go have at it. And
But,
then,
but
go on.
when you described the manager, what I thought of was a teacher with
Mhm.
children at school,
It's exactly was
stand
that.
in line.
It was like a primary school line.
Yeah.
It was like when we used to go into class 1 or 2 when we were like 6 or 7, and we're lined up, and Mrs. Walker or Mrs. Moxon would be standing outside saying, "Everybody, get under the awning so you don't get rained on. Now, stop you messing around." That's exactly what was going on,
Put your
and it was
shoelace in. Yep. Pull up your
reverting
tie.
us to children. We're
Yeah.
turning us into children so that we
Schooled, schooled children because I think you know, Johnny, my two never went to school. My 20-year-old and my 17-year-old never went to school.
you just kept them in the basement. They had to dig in the dirt for worms. Is that what
I'm
happened?
not allowed to say that on YouTube.
Okay, okay,
And
okay, okay.
what with
Sorry.
being a
For
child protection
YouTube, the
social worker.
basement was beautiful. And the worms were extraordinary. Anyway, they want you to eat worms nowadays.
No,
Go
it
on.
was I came across it in social work. I got really, really curious and started looking into it, and then I was blown away. And one of the things for me, that question that got answered, well, who brought schools to British India and
Mm,
why? Well, I know that empire wasn't an exercise in philanthropy, but it was a way for the British to separate children from their cultures, from their heritage, from their families, and train them. We are your lords and masters. Do as we say.
mm.
Don't follow your gods, follow our God.
Same thing that happened to the Native Americans
Ah,
in
so,
America, yeah.
so school's a form of colonial and class control.
Same happened in Wales. They used to my people. They used to hang a big block of wood round the neck with a chain round. I think he used to say like Welsh speaker or something on it, you
Oh,
know. And if you spoke Welsh, you were punished like that, and you would have to be publicly shown to be against the system and that speaking Welsh was a terrible thing to do. And there's been struggles that we see, and you're saying there about India. How did they did this to their own people as well? You know, in
well,
Britain.
actually, I was going to get onto that point because what happens with empire is that the the imperialists end up colonizing their own,
Hmm.
which is what's happening now with Keir Starlin impoverishing the British people, extracting their wealth in order to enrich these supranational oligarchs.
Mhm.
But they will fail.
Yeah, well, I hope they will fail. But what you're saying as well, there, that reminds me of the Industrial Revolution in the UK, where I think of the hat makers of Atherstone. We can go to a small place in North Warwickshire called Atherstone, which was on the Watling Street, which was the first Roman road that was made from down Kent Way all the way up to Shrewsbury, I think. And the Watling Street, eventually you had Anglo-Saxons on one side and the other forms of British on the other side, and they were like, and they kind of like had games and etc. against each other, and they got to know each other, and the ruling elite controlled them all, and eventually they become hatters. They've become central to the hatting industry in the UK. But previously, before the Industrial Revolution, they had made straw hats that would go out to America and be transported out in America for the slaves to use on the plantation to keep the sun off their heads. But what eventually happened was slavery stopped. And so they fitted the hatteries, the places where they made hats all the way down in through Atherstone. They fitted them with these big vats where they would dip more fancy felt hats into hydrochloric acid, I think it is, to finish them. And the fumes would make people go mad. That's where the mad as a hatter comes from, because all of the people in the hatting industry had to put up with these fumes all the time, and eventually it turned them to go mad. But at the moment, my point is, the moment that slavery stopped, the people were in the people who had been making these hats had been employed to make the headwear for slaves, become slaves because that slavery what the powers that be could not make money off that slavery anymore. They'll make money off you being slaves, and so they made those slaves. And you looked at this area in Africa, and if you actually go back to the mid 1800s and see how people lived, there were just masses and masses of squalor. There was just rooms out the back of yards, tiny little rooms where families of four would live in tiny rooms and would have to work all of the time for pittance. And they made their own people slaves because they
Wow.
could no longer make money from slavery over in America. And people don't
Wow.
realize that it was a load of young white British kids who were then sold into slavery on the ships and stuff as well, and powered the Industrial Revolution. They were young white British slaves because, as you say, those who create empires, they eventually colonize their own people.
Yeah. And something you said in the beginning about how history repeats itself. Well, I can see that happening now, like the same heuristic, the same template, the same model, where Britain, with its crazy historical, well, it's not crazy, it's historical hostility and antipathy towards Russia,
Hmm.
engaging in this futile exercise that somehow Ukraine would defeat Russia. The British government borrowed billions of dollars on the bond market
Mm.
with a view that Ukraine would prevail and Britain would then have access to Russia's rich resources, the most resource rich country in the world, Russia.
Hmm.
Nickel, tungsten, gold, silver, oil, gas, farmland that they won't allow genetically modified crops to be grown on. How primitive of them, right?
Hmm.
Britain would have access to all that wealth
Hmm.
and would be able to repay the bondholders. Except Ukraine has defaulted on its bond repayments,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
and the Bank of England backstopped them.
Hmm.
So then all this wealth is being extracted from the British citizenry in
Hmm.
order to pay back the City
Which
of London.
lowers the wealth of the native population, and in turn, then, so that they can continue to make money as the empire, they've got to bring in lots of cheap economic migrants to replace all of that wealth creation. And that's,
Yeah, and also as part of the cloud pivot strategy,
yeah,
divide
yeah,
and
yeah.
rule, right? Because Britain could really be rich if we start digging the gas and the coal and the oil
Hmm.
out of that gold, that
Yeah, yeah,
liquid
yeah, yeah.
gold we have. We could be really, really rich, right? But they won't do it because in order to keep us enslaved. But the cycle of history, Johnny, empires fail, elites crumble, people rise. That also happens.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That's a good place to it's a good place to end this conversation, Rich, my friend. This
Thank you so much.
time flew by in this conversation. It's so special to. I thank my lucky stars that I met you, because you are really my type of person. I've really enjoyed all that. The amount of times you came on TNT and it was just like two friends chatting. That's because we're two friends chatting. So,
Mhm.
listen, thanks for sticking by me and with me for all of that time and being interested in having these conversations. Can you tell people where they can find you in all the different places?
On x.com/cryptorichyt, and then bit.ly/cryptorich bit.ly/cryptorichrumble. I have, those are the best places, really.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And oh, what's your plans for the near future? What are you going to be doing?
Well, I'm going to go home because for 3 weeks,
Hmm.
go back to Pakistan, got weddings, and I'm actually,
Sounds
I
pretty
was
funny.
actually made redundant a few weeks ago as a social worker because the
Mm.
council ran out of money, and the money needs to pay for Zelensky. He's just bought a new villa in France or something.
Yeah. Unless you're watching YouTube, then we're happy that money is gone to Zelensky, and he deserves those villas because he's a very hard-working
He's
sort.
a very, very hardworking man. He's made a massive difference to Ukraine.
Oh, he has.
He
Oh,
has.
he has.
He's
Oh,
made a
he has.
big, big difference.
Yes, you're right. So going to
Yes.
go back to Pakistan, gonna eat some fantastic food at some fantastic weddings,
Oh,
I take it.
yes. Hang out with family, eat great curry,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
come back and carry on. This is
Awesome.
these are the good times in crypto between
Yeah,
now and the next year, next 11, 12 months.
good. I'm glad to hear this, and I'm glad that it's going well for you, regardless of the redundancy. And thanks for coming on the show, my friend.
Johnny, thank you for having me. I look forward to having you coming back on and you coming on my channel soon.
Definite
Thank you.
pleasure.
All the best. Bye bye.
What we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed